Oops. Go live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And I am Tracy Stuckrath, your host, and I'm having problems with LinkedIn here, so hopefully it goes live on LinkedIn in a second. It is Food Allergy Awareness Week, but this is my regular Wednesday episode, and I'm really excited to introduce you to this guy over there. His Ben Parris. He's the executive head chef at Vere Horsley Estate. Did I say that right, Ben?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. In the UK, if you can tell by his accent when he talks. But I met him a couple of weeks ago at the IACC conference, and he, when we were in New Jersey, and we got talking about allergens, and I really wanted to make sure that I introduced you to him. Because in the UK, they manage a lot more allergens than we do on their regulations, 14 versus 9 here in the US. And they've been doing it for a lot longer, right? Since 2014?
That's right, yeah. 10 years-ish.
Yeah, 10 years-ish. So before we jump into managing food allergies, can you tell us what initially drew you to a career in culinary?
Yeah, my mum was a chef cook when I was born. So she used to do sort of director's dining locally, and that sort of burning passion of cooking was sort of pushed down to me from an early age. I've always enjoyed cooking from, I think, sort of 4 or 5 years old. And it was never, there was never any other thing I wanted to do. It's, Mum's got school books when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. I just wanted to be a chef. That was all I wanted to do. So yeah, it's born and bred into me. That's awesome. The only thing I wanted to do.
Well, that's good. And so you went to high school. Did you do cooking classes in high school and then go to culinary school, or?
Yeah, so we did, it's called home economics over here back then.
Yep.
And it was very basic cooking. There was nothing decent. There was no sort of drilling down into anything exciting, really. It was just, run-of-the-mill school lessons. But yeah, went straight into college at 16, did 2 years at college, and moved up to London when I was finished that at 18. That was great.
All right, awesome. And you've worked in a wide variety of venues, not just resorts. Let's talk about the difference between those and managing food and beverage at a restaurant versus a resort.
Yeah, so I've done pretty much everything from 5-star hotels, restaurants, contract catering, brasseries, restaurants, nightclubs. I've pretty much done everything. So, pretty broad scope, really. I worked in London for 12 years. So I started at Savoy, did 4 years at Savoy Hotel in London. Then moved to Claridge's, the Oxo Tower, Tramp nightclub, Brasserie St Quentin, Mon Plaisir, a little French restaurant in Covent Garden. So I did a good solid 12 years in London, which was, it's fantastic for my career. I loved it.
Right.
And then moved back out to Surrey and Hampshire for a quieter sort of pace of life in 2006, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's there's great opportunities around here. It's commuter belt into London, so there's all sorts going around in this area. But yeah, London was where I sort of found my feet. I'm very fortunate to meet some cool people and follow around with some of the friends that I met up there into different positions and different hotels and restaurants around London. It was a good time.
Awesome. So now tell us about Vere Horsley Estate, and it's a member of IACC, which is a organization of unique and small to mid-size conference venues. So tell us about that, and who are your clients when you're cooking at that venue?
So Horsley Estate is split across 2 buildings. There's an old mansion house, which was built in the 1820s, a very beautiful building, very unique for anywhere in the UK, really. sort of stone built, flint building. It's beautiful. There's a second part of the building which is more modern. We've got 175 bedrooms, 50 meeting rooms, and the client base is literally anybody and everybody. We do a lot of corporate events. We do a lot of weddings up in the mansion house as well, and a small amount of leisure in that as well. So, pretty broad demographic of all sorts, really. But our main client base is corporate and weddings. Okay. Really, that's 90% of what we do, with a little bit of leisure thrown in as well.
So, what's a typical day in the kitchen at the estate?
It's the thing I love about conferencing hotels, no two days are the same. It's full on, week to week. I don't spend as much time in the kitchen as I like to, but there's a proportionate amount that I spend in the kitchen. Mondays and Tuesdays are generally quieter for me in terms of admin, so I spend a bit more time in the kitchen. I've got some apprentices at the moment from the local college. They're with us on a Monday and a Wednesday, so I try and spend a bit of time with them. There is all sorts of admin that goes on behind the scenes, which, payroll, forecasting, menus, wedding meetings, green tea meetings. There's, all sorts of admin that goes on behind the background.
Green tea?
Yeah, we have green tea. So that's our sort of sustainability initiative.
Oh,
we have
okay.
a team. There's about 8 of us. We meet monthly to go through all sustainability, ESG issues.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of admin. There's a lot of mentoring, not only the apprentices, but also my own team. I've got 16 team members, so 4 kitchen porters, 12 chefs, and I'm very fortunate that most of my team have been here all with me for a long time. So my number 2 I've worked with for the last 8 years. Okay. He followed me from my previous job. And some of the guys here have been here for sort of 10 or 12 years. So we've got a very good, team that have been here a long time. They know what they're doing. So I'm very lucky in that sense. We don't have a lot of staff turnover. But yeah, no 2 days are the same. I'm, doing anything and everything from, cooking for events and, lunches, buffets, weddings, bowl food, canapes, barbecues, anything and everything. But then I have a lot of admin that goes on behind the scenes, relating to running a kitchen.
Okay. So at the IACC meeting, you sat in a session where I actually did the podcast live, and I was interviewing Felix and Patrick. And you came up to me, or no, it was actually after my presentation, or was it after my presentation or after that podcast where you're like, okay, I need to talk to you
before the podcast. Yeah.
Okay. I need to talk to you about the laws here in the States versus the UK. And as I said, at the beginning, you all have to manage and label for 14 different allergens. And here in the States, we only have to do that on 9 foods that are on prepackaged. So can you talk about, and it was the EU 1169, and then since then in the UK, it's also been Natasha's Law, and Owen's Law is coming out, I believe, right? It's being voted on.
There's a lot of sad stories relating to allergens for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about, you've been a chef for a long time. So how has this impacted you positively and negatively, I guess, and I don't want to say negatively, but what have your challenges been, and what have you found as opportunities in labeling or figuring out menu ideas to accommodate different dietary restrictions?
Well, I think, like we said, we've been doing it for 10 years now, so it's, second nature now. But I think sort of winding the clock back 10 years, it was a lot to get a head around in terms of getting everybody on board and, sort of rolling out the training of it. But it has been it's a huge peace of mind for us, me especially as the executive chef, that we have the procedures in place to protect people. my mum has a severe allergy to egg, and she's had a couple of close calls when she's been, away on holiday. She had to carry an EpiPen for a while, so I understand firsthand how dangerous it can be. We cook for, on average 250 people a day, across breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we have a large amount of allergens and dietary requirements daily. We're very fortunate here that a lot of our guests are pre-booked. So we know exactly who's going to be on site. We know exactly what allergens they've got beforehand, and generally that is sort of up to a week in advance. So we have menus in place that are group standard for lunch. So our smart space offer is our lunch offer. That's done at group level, so we have all the allergen information for our breakfast and lunch. Our dinner menus here are done by ourselves, as well as the wedding or any private events. So we have that backup information for all the other services, but we can adapt any of those dishes for anybody with dietary requirements, and it is probably our number one focus is compliance with allergens. It's a big focus for anybody in the UK. We've got great procedures in place. We've got loads of training for all the staff. That's not only the kitchen, front house, the sales team, anybody that takes a booking. We have an online training system, which is done annually, but then we do bite-sized training on a monthly basis. And then any new starter, before they even start cooking within the business, they have a full induction on allergen training before they even start in the kitchen. So our sort of training and communication is great from the point of the customer booking through to when the function sheets are issued, discussing function sheet meetings, then on a daily meeting in the kitchen, and all those allergen requirements can be catered to because we've got so much lead time. Obviously, we have leisure bookings as well, but again, because it's so imprinted into our nature, it's flagged up with whoever takes the order. They come into the kitchen, they discuss it with the chefs, and it's thankfully it's we got all the right procedures in place that protect us as food operators. I think the only negative thing with allergens is that we sort of, from somebody that's classically trained with cooking, we are substituting a lot of those classical ingredients and skills out of our repertoire of cooking to accommodate allergens. So traditional mirepoix, onions, carrots, celery, leek. It's no longer celery, so you're changing flavor profiles of classic sauces, classic recipes, because you're leaving out core ingredients. And I think really that's the only thing that I get a bit miffed with occasionally. But it's a sign of the times. We're moving forward with things, and that's where we're at the moment. But yeah, we sort of try to eliminate as much of the allergens as we can. And, rather than adapting everything all the time.
Well, okay, and there's so many things to unpack there. I celery, to me, because we don't regulate that here in the States, that's got to be a really hard one for chefs, because you're eliminating that flavor profile. And you might think that, celery, it does have a strong flavor profile.
Yeah, when you're talking jus and stocks and sauces and soups and all that sort of thing, core items that you make, that is, for somebody that's classically trained and been cooking using celery for 27 years, that is it's quite a big flavor profile to leave out of something.
Right. And have you found anything that replaces that flavor profile well?
No, not at all. I mean, there's celeriac, but there's there's nothing that we substitute with it at the moment.
Okay. So the training and because your team has been with you for a long time, you were all learning at the same time when these laws came out, right? And figuring out how to kind of do some of those replacements. And what was the biggest challenge? And I'm saying this as a challenge because There's chefs that still are like, I'm not doing this. This is the way I cook, and that's all. How did you overcome some of those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is the the variety of nationalities that we have here. I mean, in Europe we have Polish, Bulgarian, Romanian, Ukrainian, all sorts of nationalities that come work with us. So that the language barrier and sort of trying to, it's almost going back to a classroom scenario of really drilling down onto the basics and trying to explain those nuances of things like Worcester sauce and soy sauce and the hidden ingredients, sesame and tahini, and different skill sets. You've got career chefs that have been cooking for 15, 20 years. They're a lot easier to train on that sort of thing rather than an 18-year-old that's straight out of college and is trying to absorb all this information. Then you throw allergens into there on top of it. It's a hell of a lot for the young chefs to take on board. But we've got a good, robust training system in place. It's not only online, it's face-to-face, it's, monthly sessions, it's bite-sized sessions as well. We've managed to get around it, but it is very difficult, especially we got, the influx of Ukrainians, put into a situation where they had to find work very quickly in another country with a language that they don't speak very well. You had to be very, very cautious in the approach of putting them into, a service scenario and not fully understanding, our laws and legislations around allergens. So it has been a challenge and continues to be, but it's just down to training communication. That is, the biggest thing we can do.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And listening to Attorney yesterday, he's like, training is the biggest thing. Is like it's helping you mitigate risks and education. And the more we know, the better off we are. So with all of this happening, do you have a memorable experience where you adapted quickly to accommodate somebody's dietary needs and you're like, oh my gosh, that's delicious, right? Is there anything like that that's happened?
There's a lot of scenarios. I mean, it's very difficult to adapt, to an order that's come on last minute.
Right.
But we've certainly adapted dishes where, we've had a dish with meringue on for example. We had a wedding dish with meringue on, and you used the chickpea water to make a vegan meringue or an eggless meringue. So we try and innovate, as much as we can to create substitutes for dishes. Our main focus really when it comes to being innovative is weddings. We have a lot of corporate clients here. We can make amendments on the hop, but when it comes down to somebody's special day, if a bride particularly likes the sound of a dish and they've got an allergen and it can't be done, then we would try and innovate and create a substitute for it, such as the meringue. But on a day-to-day, it's not something we do all the time, but certainly when it comes down to the big events, the weddings and that sort of thing, we go above and beyond to make sure that we can replicate dishes for everybody.
Yeah, because you don't want, it's that movie Four Weddings and a Funeral, right? You don't want the funeral.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. You want another wedding instead.
For sure.
Yeah. How do you stay ahead of the curve, and how do your chefs stay ahead of the curve in coming up with new concepts and new ideas of menus? And I'm sure you've got your standard menus, but coming up with new ones, because everybody's like, oh, I don't want to order off your standard menu. How do you stay ahead of the curve and come up with new ideas that are meeting different dietary restrictions, and especially like vegan and flexitarian, things like that?
Yeah, so staying ahead of the curve, I think it's very difficult because there's constant change. I'm a foodie through and through, so I listen to loads of different podcasts. I read books. I listen to audio books. So I think late last year, the ultra processed food book came out. So I started listening to that, and you sort of realise there's going to be a movement coming from it. So we try and adapt to where we can. But in terms of creating menus, it's from being pushed from the sales team all the time. It's people want different food items, they want different menus. they want to be catered for, in a unique event. And that's the sort of thing that I love doing. We can do so much repetitive business and using core menus and that sort of thing. I love doing things differently. So, I enjoy the challenge of being, pushed to create something differently, whether that's a street food menu from all different areas of the world, or, a festival style menu or whatever. But then trying to create a vegan or, vegetarian option in that as well, that makes it, just as exciting for those as anybody else that's attending. We've got a large group arriving on Sunday. There's, I think, something like 35 different nationalities. And we've got a buffet next Tuesday night where we've select a dish from each of those nationalities to put on the menu, so that they have a slice of, sort of home comfort, and, it creates discussion with their colleagues that they're here with. So we have food from, Bangladesh and Poland and Sri Lanka and, all over the world. And that's the sort of thing I enjoy. I enjoy being creative and coming up with new ideas.
That's pretty cool. And because then it's helpful for them to feel comfortable. And I like the fact that you said, because then they can educate, hey, this is my favorite dish from home, or, things like that, because it broadens our perspective of different food styles. Yeah. So, how did you, forgot my question. Okay. So you were just talking about 35 different nationalities. I'm assuming there's not 35 different buffet items on that, but when you're doing a buffet, I want to bring in sustainability aspect here as well. How do you incorporate, when you're meeting dietary restrictions without overproducing, too many items? What are your sustainability practices, going back to your green team, that you're incorporating into the kitchen?
So we are we're driven by group level as well as the things we do here on site. So we work closely as a team of executive chefs within Vere to create menus that are sustainable. So we try and use as much sustainable produce as we can. When we come up to writing our seasonal menus, we change our core menus 3 or 4 times a year. So we meet up as a team and discuss those. So we use as many sort of sustainable fish, sustainable products as we can when we're writing those core menus. And that's something that it's difficult when you're talking about a national hotel chain, because we have a national supplier. We have the ability to purchase locally, so that's always an option, and we're being pushed for more and more sustainability as time goes on. We're lucky to have a local butchers that we can use, and we have literally, turkeys, lamb, beef 5 miles down the road with our local butcher. So yeah, it's something we've been asked more and more of. It's something that we're looking at, into more detail in the future. But equally, it's something that logistically poses a few challenges because of being a national group with national suppliers.
Right. Well, Michael mentioned to me when we were in Jersey that, somebody came and said, we want all of our food to come from 100-mile radius. And he's like, well, let's talk salt and pepper. Let's talk, flour or whatever. And really had to broaden that perspective of like, this is not mined here or grown here or whatever. So we can't do every single ingredient that way. So how do you balance that sustainability wise versus buying from, another country and shipping it in?
I think, so the what Michael was referring to, our group development chef at the time was pushed to create a menu within a 25-mile radius. And his findings were, a straight answer back. Would you like tea and coffee? Would you like spices? Would you like salt and pepper? None of those things are available within a 20-mile radius. Tea's not, something that's grown on our doorstep. Same with coffee. So it's about sense checking really. We've got the ability to be creative as we can, but if you still want those sort of luxuries on your menu, it's not going to be possible in order to deliver a sustainable event. However, we can push for sustainable meat, local producers, local suppliers that can offset that. But in order to do a a 20-mile radius menu. It's very, very difficult. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the Pig Hotel Group. They're based all around Hampshire. They do a menu that's based within 30 miles. I don't think the entirety of their menu comes within 30 miles, but a hell of a lot of it does. And if you turn on the flip side of their menu, they have a little map of the area and where all their food items come from, which is, it's a pretty cool concept. But I think, like I said, it's something that is being asked more and more. And I think, pretty soon we're going to have to make, a big step in that direction. But it can certainly be balanced out to be more achievable to, in certain areas than, to balance out the things that we can't get within 20, 30-mile radius.
Right, exactly. I mean, because you can't get everything from 20, 30 miles. And I know one chef I think he was in Ohio. He's like, I buy these items, my staples, my flours, my sugars, my salts from the big food distributors. And then I buy my vegetables and things from that local farmer, right? Figuring out how to balance the cost.
A great example is we've got a local gin distillery, and they make incredible gin. It's sold all over the country, all over the world. That is classed as sustainable. It's 5 miles down the road.
Right.
But where does the vodka come from to make the gin?
Oh, yeah.
Poland. Where does the glass come from that they put the gin into? It comes from Italy. So although you think something is sustainable and local, when you sort of deep dive into where the produce comes from, it's not as sustainable as you first think. It might only be 7 miles down the road, but the vodka and the bottles are going to be transported from all over Europe. And then when you introduce the the aromats, the spices, they can come from all over the world. So right. It's it's difficult to find something truly sustainable and local, but there's pockets of it popping up here and there, and we'll hopefully grow with that in the future.
Right, and I think it's a good balance, figuring out the balance of that. I'm going to do this, but then on the other side, I have to do this, right? So you're figuring out that difference of that. And speaking of alcohol, the other day I was chatting with 2 people from the UK about allergen labeling on alcohol. Do you, managing that food and beverage side of it, I mean, you could go down to the distiller that's 5 miles away and making that gin and talk to him about, are there any allergens in that alcohol? But how do you approach that on the beverage side of your menus? Do you? And I'm not
pointing. Okay. We use a system called Procure Wizard for purchasing.
Okay.
So all of our suppliers load their allergen information onto Procure Wizard. So all of our purchasing is done through there, as well as all of our costings for dishes as well. So as long as all the allergens have been loaded on correctly by the supplier, then our allergen list gets pulled from Procure Wizard into a printable document, which then goes onto each service point. So we've got 3 bars here. As well as pop-up bars. They've all got their own allergen folder next to them with allergens listing for every single drink that's on the menu.
Wow.
So yeah, Procure Wizard is a great system. You can type a recipe into there, create a costing. It will automatically create an allergen list. Once you finish the menu, you can pull the allergen list from that menu and then distribute it to each service point.
Wow. All right. I'm going to put a comment in there and give the link to them. I think there's something similar to that here called Galley, but I haven't looked at it deep enough to know. But I mean, and because that's a big challenge, is like knowing it from all the way from the producer side, all the way through putting it on the table. And allowing you to do that. And one of the guys I was talking to, it has a company called it's an app called And It Has, to help identify the allergens on the eater side of it, right? To help you manage that information. But because, and manufacturers are going to change the recipe potentially sometimes, right?
Absolutely,
So Procure Wizard helps you do that.
Yeah, so the only issue you have to be careful with is obviously being sent substitutes. It's then just checking the substitute item versus what you've ordered. But, as a general rule, that is, as long as the allergens have all been, listed on there by the supplier correctly, and you're getting the correct product that you've ordered versus the correct product that you put on your costing or on your menu, that allergen list is as accurate as it can be.
Yeah, well, and exactly. And I know I was talking to you beforehand. There was a woman who got her allergen was served to her, I'm sure by accident, but what are the steps and procedures that we can do? So, and on that note, I mean, besides your training, what other kind of strategies do you employ in the kitchen to make sure to quality control, and quality assure that things are not, no allergens are in specific items that you're saying that they're not in? Does that make sense?
It's down to our senior team. So I've got 2 sous chefs and 2 senior chef parties. So as I said, it's drilled into everybody from day one, but it's down to our, myself and the senior team to be spot checking and just, checking the younger guys, all their prep, and making sure when deliveries are coming in, we've got no substitutes, that, we're on track with everything we're doing. So it's, it's a manual check on top of a, generated allergen template, but it's it's down to the guys to be there and keep an eye on the guys as much as possible.
Okay, so and then on that note, because I Googled you, and I saw that you were doing some judging and some education of the younger chefs, not in your kitchen, but outside your kitchen. And earlier you said it's really challenging trying to teach them how to be a chef, but also managing, that kind of data. What are some things that you're educating them on, and what's some advice that you would give them?
I've done a couple of things recently. One of them was a school cookery competition, which I went and judged, which was great to see. These kids are like 12, 13, 14 years old. They had to create a start and a main course in an hour and a half, but it had to be costed as well with a method and recipe. Great cookery skills for such young kids out there, and I think it's great to be able to step out of the kitchen and give back to to some of the younger kids that are cooking, but also the students at the local colleges. I just think they're so lucky in their generation that they've got information at their fingertips. When it came to me learning to cook in the mid-90s, information was all cookbooks. That was pretty much it. You want a cookbook or a magazine, that was the only way to learn. Whereas these guys got TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. There is so much information at their fingertips. It's just down to them to sort of push them to go out there and learn and absorb as much as they can from these fantastic resources that are free to anybody. They're very, very lucky to have such a great wealth of information at their fingertips. I just got a message from Tracy saying that power's cut off, which once disappeared. So following on, I just think these the students, the young kids of today have got so much information at their fingertips. They're blessed to have so much, recipes and ideas in such condensed form on so many points of, apps and things on the internet. Very, very lucky.
Okay, so where I disappeared on you?
Oh, you did.
The power went out. A big storm is coming through. I heard the thunder and then the power went out. So you held your own, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap there. I wonder what was going on, but yeah, all good.
Okay. You just kept talking. That's good. It's interesting too, when you're talking about the young chefs. Do you feel like they're bringing any of their knowledge around their friends' allergies or their choices in food and beverage nowadays to the kitchen?
I think that generation, there's certainly there's more allergens with the younger generation. So I think they're if they've encountered it, then yeah, for sure. But it's they're aware of it. Allergens are on every single menu you go to in the UK, so they are aware of allergens before they even start picking up a knife. So it's a lot easier to sort of start that process with them. Having a bit of knowledge from it, but
right.
It's okay.
It's okay. So how do you envision, going forward? I mean, things around allergens have changed since you started being a chef, even when you started with your mom, right? Cooking with your mom. But where do you see the future of this going? And what do we, and incorporating sustainability into that too? What can chefs, what can diners expect, when eating out, because the number of people with food allergies just keeps growing, right? And
I can't
at this point it's here.
I can't see the allergen list getting any smaller. I think it's only going to get bigger. I mean, one of our allergens is lupin. I don't really come across any products with lupin in it, and I've certainly never been made aware of anybody with a lupin allergy. I think it's a bit of a strange one, but we get so many with onions and garlic as an allergy. I think the allergy list is only going to get bigger. But I think, possibly dropping out lupin, I just don't see. I think it's a bit of a weird one to have in there. But there is certainly, pork isn't something we have to, it's not something we have to advertise on an allergen sheet. I think that will probably end up being put on there, as an allergy. But yeah, I can only see an allergen list getting longer, really. I think it's... There's certainly a lot of repetitive allergens that aren't listed, which will eventually be put on there. I think that's
I think pork is on the list for Korea,
right?
And so I do know it's on somebody's list, but and then have you experienced anybody with alpha gal or the mammal meat allergy?
No, not at all.
So it's from a tick bite. They got bit by a tick, and now they can't eat any mammalian meat. So no pig, no pork, pork and pig are the same. No beef, things like that. And some people I've met are so allergic that they can't eat organic food because the cow manure was used to grow those vegetables.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's a whole different can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and so thinking through that and to the point where even medically necessary that like there's people who have pig skin is used in medical procedures and people are having reactions to it from that.
Right.
But that's a whole nother level. It's like, hey, did you use bone broth or beef broth in this recipe? Right. Going down to same thing with celery. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of really serious ones. There was a young boy. I think he was he's about 10 or 11. He could have no E numbers, no. He could only no idea. He had He couldn't eat any. He could only eat wild meat, so he could eat venison, hare, game, duck, that sort of thing. All his vegetables had to be boiled in Evian water. He had a very, very strict diet. So with that, at that particular venue I was working in, I had to have a full brief with his mum and dad prior to them arriving, and then just a list of. It was, rather than being a list of ingredients he couldn't have, it was literally a list of ingredients that he could have. So he was eating like venison, mallard, and grouse, and all sorts of wild game meats. And it was a lot easier to manage that with things he could eat rather than things he couldn't. But there are some unfortunate people out there that have got some really, really serious cases. That being one of them.
I just Googled it. The E numbers is the ingredient list of your packaged food. Replace the chemical or common name of particular food additives. They're used to enhance the color, flavor, texture, or prevent food from spoiling. So I'll research that. That's interesting. I've never heard that one either. And I guess it's food additives.
Yes. Yeah.
Or shelf stabilization, things like that.
Yeah. Colorings, preservatives, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, which goes back to sustainability, using local and fresh ingredients that don't have any additives in it, might be helpful. Yeah. Okay. So, Ben.
Probably most local sustainable meals.
Yeah.
I said there's probably most sustainable local food we've ever cooked. It was all all wild.
Well, and it's funny because you put hare right behind whatever you said, venison and the hare, and it's hare's rabbit, not the hair from the animal. I had to double think about that, rethink that. Okay, so what I asked you this question before we started. What is your favorite in all your travels and all the different experiences in food and beverage that you have? Do you have a favorite food that you like to eat?
So I mean, we've all got things that we like and dislike, but I listen to Heston Blumenthal's podcast, and previously I've always thought about there's things I like cooking, there's things I like eating, but Heston broke it down into a really interesting sort of series of questions. What is your favorite meal? Favorite food to eat? Would that be out with your wife on a winter's night, sat by a fire in a pub, or would it be your favorite thing to eat on a sunny Sunday afternoon with friends in your back garden? Would it be autumn, winter? Would it be breakfast, lunch, dinner? There's so many different categories in which you would consider your favorite food. And I really heard that podcast, so I thought, "Quite, that is a really good response to that question," because there's so many nuances into in any of those categories. Your favorite thing to eat in spring might be asparagus. Your favorite thing in winter might be a bit of braised beef. I wouldn't necessarily dirty fat burger in front of the wife whilst having a romantic meal on a Sunday in a pub. Whereas if you're sitting with your mates in the back garden having a few beers, you'd have a burger stuffed with anything. So it's a funny question, and not really until I listened to his podcast I thought that's quite an interesting answer to quite a common question, really. But
it relates to the experience too. I love it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I love all food. It's lucky to be in a business where food is is paramount in everything we do. But when you sort of drill into that question of what is your favorite, what do you like to eat? That's a difficult question to answer if you put those questions around it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because what is your favorite food to eat at a banquet versus what's your favorite food to eat when you're at home? That's completely different.
Or at breakfast, or a brunch, or a lunch, or a dinner. They're all different at the end of the day.
Right, exactly. I could eat blueberries all day long, though. So do you have lots of blueberries where you are?
Not really, no.
No?
I'll get some for you when you visit them.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I need to get on the plane and come over and visit you. Okay, so to round this out, in thinking through food allergies, thinking through all of your jobs in culinary and the sustainability aspect of what you do at the estate, what does safe, sustainable, and inclusive dining experience mean to you?
Safe is compliance, which is everything for us in terms of food safety, hazard analysis. Sustainable is everything we strive to do. Which things we discussed. It's I think the sustainability part is the bit we need to work on. Inclusivity is certainly something that we have. We do really well with. But inclusivity I don't think is an issue here in the UK in general, but certainly not here. But yeah, it's the inclusivity and the safety bit is easily manageable. The sustainable bit is the more difficult bit for us. But I think we've got made a bit of headway into it, and I think that's the bit we're going to work on more and more in the future. But yeah, inclusive dining is everything we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, because you want everybody to enjoy you want those people to come back to your venue, right?
Yeah, you don't want the vegans sat at a table of 10 to look out of place because they got a salad whilst everybody else is eating something completely different. We want to try and make them all eat a similar thing.
All right. I'm going to actually, let me see if I can find it really quickly. This is what I was handed when I pre-registered in advance, and I said I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. All right. And this is what I was delivered for my lunch.
Which is pathetic, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And then I'm going to see if I can do this other one. And then at a different venue, I need to make sure I cover that up. Oops. It was a plate of romaine lettuce with some sliced onions and tomatoes and a piece of very bland chicken on top. And I'm like, some spices would be good.
But I think, to be fair, that 15, 20 years ago, that was commonplace. But I think having the allergen procedures in place makes it a lot easier. We have all the allergen information there for all the ingredients in each dish. So it's second nature for all our guys. We've got a buffet outside. We've got a salad station, soup station, a hot station. We've got desserts. The guys can easily go out there now and just say, you can't have that, you can't have that, can't have that. Everything else, you're good. If there's something there that if there's nothing dairy free, we can certainly go and make you something. And that process now is a hell of a lot easier. It's not. You shouldn't be treated like that. You shouldn't be given a chicken breast with a bit of fluff on the side. You should have a full plate and portion of food. And that having those procedures in place, makes that super easy for us now.
So you feel like the procedures have actually helped you develop better menus. I say better, but develop menus that meet more needs.
Yeah, I would say 6, 7, 8 years ago, if a vegan walked into the restaurant, it was like, okay, well, let's think of what we can do. Let's, look in the fridge. Let's see what we've got available. Speak to the guest, ask them what they want. Whereas now, a vegan walks into the restaurant and it is, there is a vegan dish there. We know what vegan options there are. It is, it's not just one option. There are a few options. And it just makes it incredibly easy for us now. Whereas, we're certainly proactive now. Whereas, 7, 8 years ago, we were reactive. We are inclusive dining is in everything we do. It's second nature.
All right. So we just got to pop in here. Question. Roseanne said, unfortunately, many venues behave as though vegetarianism is the absence of meat. So you get lettuce, tomatoes, and a 3-bean salad. No thought about nutrition and taste. Wholeheartedly, Roseanne, I agree with you. Even for any dietary restrictions, right? I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of substitute meats or that sort of thing, but we've always got tofu and tempeh and a whole host of, other protein items that we can put in there as well. But it's,
all right. Speaking of that, did you see that huge jackfruit in New Jersey at the competition? So do you use a lot of jackfruit? That was huge.
We
How many
have,
people?
yeah, I mean, it was massive, wasn't it? So they're prevalent around in Thailand and, the surrounding areas. But yeah, jackfruit has been around for a while. We've got a specific vegetarian supplier called Vegetarian Express. They make jackfruit burgers, jackfruit wings, all sorts of, protein-based items from a jackfruit. But yeah, we have loads of other options as well. But we don't buy a jackfruit in whole. It's generally something that's being turned into something.
Right. Yeah. I've never seen a human. I mean, it was like, I can't do it in the camera here.
Twice the size of a watermelon, isn't it? Massive.
It was, it seemed bigger than a watermelon, but yeah. So yeah, that was crazy. All right. Well, Ben, I really appreciate this. And I appreciate the fact that, over the course of 10 years now that you, because of policies and restrictions and your training, that you've used this to me as an opportunity, to gain new business and to welcome new guests to your table.
Absolutely. No, it's, I think it's only a good thing. It's, we learn a hell of a lot, and it's, like I say, it's just second nature now. It is, it's an easy thing to manage and monitor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. All right, everybody, here is how you get a hold of Ben on LinkedIn. He's under Benjamin Parris with 2 R's in there. And he's also on Instagram as Parris Private Dining. Did I get that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, I'm going to put this down at the bottom. The resort is the Vere Horsley Estate. So check that out. And actually, the IACC European Conference is being held there in September, right?
In September, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Lots of planning going into that.
Okay, so yes, need to come out and visit you for that. So,
absolutely.
Well, everybody, tomorrow I will be back here. I am actually interviewing the CEO of FAIR, which is Food Allergy Research Education. And for the last podcast of the week for Food Allergy Awareness Week, I thank Ben for being here during this week to help me celebrate that and educating and awareness. And I look forward to seeing you. And everybody, until then, stay safe and eat well. Oh, actually, we have a comment real quick before comment. Seeing Allergy-Safe and Delicious on the same menu offerings would be great. Roseanne, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate that. And for commenting. So yes, again, everybody stay safe and eat well. And until next time, have a great day.